racing towards third. Are they going to send him? Here he comes. PCA to the plate. And wow! Inside the park home run. Pete Crow Arms.
As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Baseball Buddies. We are a few weeks into the season, and boy, has it been great to have baseball back. And great to talk about it with my buddy. That's Jeff Sewing. I'm Pat Barker. We're the Baseball Buddies. By the end of the season, I'm going to have an intro down that makes sense. I'm working my way through it. Jeff, you look very nice today. You look very put together. What's the occasion?
Yeah, man, I'm on assignment, for work. So we got a little shindig, a little event that's being produced here in Atlanta. I've never been to Atlanta. Gotta tell you, nice city. I like it. I like it a lot. There seems to be a lot to do here. I had a couple. I decided to be a very talkative, which I know that this is touchy. But I was a very talkative Uber passenger today, asking a lot of questions about what. Thankfully, I had some very gracious Uber drivers that taught me a lot about Atlanta while I was going all over the city to find, the correct computer cords that we, didn't have, or, whatever we needed for this thing we're doing tomorrow. It's gonna be fun, I think.
You know what's really funny? I was just down in Atlanta a couple weeks ago, as we talked about on the thing, the podcast here, and I was raving about how good the Uber drivers were. They were just the right amount of talkative here in LA. Nobody wants to talk, which I understand. I was an Uber driver in LA. It's a nightmare. I get it. I used to go down to Austin a fair amount, and they love to talk, but it's all uncomfortable talk.
Mm-hmm.
It's all things where I'm like, I wish you weren't talking. Atlanta was the first city I've been in a while where every single Uber driver, they were quiet until the right moment hit, and then they were like, it's time for me to put on a show and have a really good conversation with you, and very knowledgeable about everything, like you said, very helpful. Yeah, shout out to the Atlanta Uber drivers, man. Your rideshare scene is out of control down there.
Yeah. It's been a wild experience. The first I thought it was going to be tough because the first Uber driver I had was like, I was in the car and I was like, this air freshener is too much. And that's my least favorite thing you can have. My seatbelt cannot work, and I don't care if I'm in your Uber. But if you're too strong on the air freshener, but he did break the ice with a nice traffic thing. We talked a little bit about that, and then that was that. But then I had like a really great one who, like, the car wasn't great.
Oh no,
nothing.
None of them are.
Yeah, the car wasn't great, but the conversation was just like another level. So yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Look, I know you're on assignment. You had to join late, and it's late where you are, and you have a busy day of work tomorrow. So what do you say we just jump right into this thing, and we can get you to bed at a hopefully reasonable hour.
That sounds good to me, man.
So as we're recording, it is currently Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball. The anniversary of Jackie Robinson, of course, breaking the color barrier. In honor of that, I'm wearing my Kansas City Monarchs hat, which was Jackie's team in the Negro Leagues. Unfortunately, I forgot to change the bobbleheads above me after doing my Phillies podcast. And if you've seen the movie 42, you would know that 7 Phillies bobbleheads might not be the best way to honor Jackie, so I apologize for that. Phillies did not come out of that movie looking great. So I'm batting 500 here. Overall, I think not too bad. We did not do any pre-production on this. We're just jumping on and talking about whatever kind of stuck out to us the last week in baseball. I feel like in past iterations of the podcast, if the Phillies and Cubs went head-to-head in a 3-game series, of course we would lead with that, with it being our teams. I get the impression that we're both so apathetic about our teams so far this year that it almost doesn't matter. The Phillies won game one via blowout. I texted you in the middle, and there was not any trash talk to be had. And then the Cubs pretty thoroughly took games 2 and 3. I don't get the impression that you're overly excited about that or felt like it proved a whole lot. Did you watch any of the series? Do you have any takeaways from it? Or are we both just in the same boat where it's like, I don't care what these 3 games looked like, I still don't really like my team?
I think what's been going on with me and the Cubs early on this season, I hinted towards it a little bit last week. We had a little bit of a discussion about Jed Hoyer and whether or not he's actually good at his job. These games have been interesting. It's been a lot of the Cubs. These last 2 games have been a lot of the Cubs getting back what they had lost run differential wise, to make them look a little more imposing than I think that they are. I think the issue when I look at the Cubs is I see a team, and we talked about this early in the season, they're going to be a really good regular season team. They just have a lot of good, solid players. There's a lot of depth. The depth is already being tested right now, with the Cade Horton injury, which is a gigantic loss for them. There's injuries in the bullpen. There's other injuries in the rotation. Matthew Boyd, who was an all-star last year, is on the IL right now. So the depth is being tested, but then you've had guys like Imanaga has refound the form that he's had from a couple years ago, and I think that considering his spring, everybody was really worried about Jameson Taillon, and he's not anything to write home about, but it's a guy that's probably going to give you 160 innings, and it's going to be fine, low 4 ERA sort of stuff. There was a report that they're interested in finally being the team that signs the pitcher that we were just talking about.
Giolito?
That Lucas Giolito, which seems like a very Cubs move. But still, at the end of the day, I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with you and the Phillies, where I'm at with this team is I'm like, somewhere along the way, the Cubs win the World Series, which was, one of the greatest moments I've ever had as a sports fan, maybe the greatest. And ever since then, there hasn't been the dogged pursuit that there was then to finally do that thing. And so they've kind of ended up in this malaise, and now this, like, it's cool that everybody's locked up into these contracts. I like that you get to kind of get used to the team and all that sort of stuff. But like, when I look at the guys and I'm like, Dansby Swanson, I'm like, hey, that's a good player. Nico Horner, hey, that's a good player. Alex Bregman, hey, that's a good player. You've got Michael Busch under team control for a while. Obviously, they re-signed Pete Crow Armstrong, but Pete Crow Armstrong hasn't really taken that superstar step, although he made a fucking ridiculous catch today. And you're just wondering if that bat is going to be the first half of last year, or if it's going to be like the second half of last year. And for how long is it going to be that bat? And can we get back to the first half of last year? Because that's truly what they need to be anything that really, really matters at the end of the day. And so I think, that there's this weird thing now where I'm like, this isn't good enough anymore. Like, this was good enough for me in the early 2000s, right? Like, this was good enough then. It's not good enough now. Like, I've had the World Series. You're spending enough money to be really competitive, but consistently, it's a team that's getting its teeth kicked in by a Brewers organization that's just better at all the stuff, development, identifying young talent. It's just it's a weird spot to be in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, that's exactly what we're running into with the Phillies. I think the difference is with the Cubs, at least there's the Bregman thing is a little bit of a shot in the arm, theoretically, although I guess losing Tucker it kind of like comes out as, a break-even proposition. But for the Phillies, it's just kind of like the same team that we've had. And I've talked about it in detail on my other podcast, but it just creates this situation where, ownership doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. If the team gets off to a slow start, you can't be like, well, it's only been 10 games. No, it's been 3 or 4 seasons, right? It's like the same kind of guys doing the same kind of things, and they're just like a little bit older. So, we have Justin Crawford and Andrew Painter have been like the high spots this season, and it just makes me think like, man, what if this organization was any good at developing talent at all? It's so fun to see two, capable major leaguers come up and break camp with the team and really perform well. And it's like, yeah, I'm envious of organizations that have the right guys in place. Of course, if I was a Brewers or Rays fan, I'd be losing my mind because it's like, yeah, we have those guys, but we don't keep any of the players. Obviously, the Dodgers are the example of somebody that gets you a man that can do both kind of thing. But yeah, I think the Phillies and Cubs are. I think everybody is just kind of in a position where it's like we're just gonna wait and see, and kind of nothing is going to be good enough because it's going to be like for the Phillies, it's like, well, they've made the playoffs 4 years in a row. And they went to a World Series, and they went to an NLCS, and then they lost in the DS 2 years in a row. And it's like, you need to prove things in October. So everything leading up to October is kind of a no-win proposition. Because if they're good, it's like, who cares? And if they're bad, it's like, well, this is even worse than I anticipated. I thought at least they'd make the playoffs. So there's really no winning, I think, as a Phillies fan and, maybe as a Cubs fan as well.
Yeah, it's this weird thing. I think that there's been this idea in baseball for the longest time. This is more overarching than anything else, that if you get into the playoffs, you have a chance to win the World Series. And that kind of hasn't been the case for, I think, a while now. Now, a lot of that has to do with that you run into the Dodgers eventually. but like there's this like weird baseball hell that's going on right now. Cause like, the thing that's so tough about this is like, I don't want to be like, what I would be excited about is if they traded all these guys for prospects and we went back to the thing where you like are fucking terrible for years. And then then you're bringing guys up and then it's fun again. And then, everybody's under team control. And then, whatever the thing is, like, I don't really want that either. It's just, it's a tough place to be because it's like, I don't want the alternative, which is to get bad and then try to get good after that. I think, and for you too, it's like, at this point, like, I'm expecting the thing. Like, you spent all this money, you went and got, you told me all these things about Alex Bregman. It's like, go win the thing. Like, that's...
Yeah, I mean, maybe not expecting, but hoping. And kind of the bar just gets higher, where, winning the division isn't enough, and making the NLCS isn't enough, and it feels like, if you don't... at least make the World Series, it feels like the season's a bit of a failure, which I fully recognize pragmatically as that's an unreasonable expectation to have.
Yeah.
And it's unfair to put that on the team or management or anybody where it's like if you lose to the Dodgers in the division series, the season's a failure. It's not fair, but life isn't fair, right? And that's kind of where fans are at. And when you consider how much tickets are now, it's really hard to place any blame on fans for anything, in my mind. Let's talk about some different things. I have the Reddit MLB or the Reddit baseball page open, and there's a few stories on here. I'm just gonna kind of grab, and I wanna talk to you about and see if you saw them. There's a couple of them that I think there's a discussion to be had. This first one, not necessarily a discussion. I was at the Dodgers-Mets game last night, and this was the kind of thing that I didn't see in the stadium. I was unaware of it. I saw it after the fact, and this was a story that really touched me, and I thought it was really incredible. Alex Vesia, reliever for the Dodgers, who missed, I believe, the entirety of the playoffs, or it might have just been the World Series. He might have left mid-NLCS. He missed the World Series for sure last year because his wife, unfortunately, they suffered a loss of a pregnancy that was very, very, very far along. I don't know all the details of it, but as someone who has also experienced a pregnancy loss much earlier in the process, very, very different. My wife would tell me you never want to compare two people's trauma and say that, well, theirs was worse than ours because she doesn't watch this podcast, so I'll flat out say it. Theirs was worse than ours. To be that far along in the process to where you have the baby room painted and all that kind of stuff, I can't imagine everything that, the horrors that come along with that. Last night was Healthcare Appreciation Night at the Dodger Stadium. In response, Alex and his wife rented out several boxes for all of the healthcare professionals who assisted in the situation with their daughter, and they were
That's
all
great.
at the game. And Dave Roberts decided to have Edwin Diaz throw a bullpen session during the day. I don't know when the last time I heard of a relief pitcher throwing a bullpen session and becoming unavailable, but as a result, he was unavailable, and they had to turn to Alex Vesia for the close, and he struck out the side on 10 pitches. I was at the game. He was absolutely unbelievable. I didn't know the healthcare thing until after the fact, but I just thought it was such a cool, touching story. And as much as everyone hates the Dodgers, and I get it, again, they're always a class organization when it comes to stuff like this, and I thought that every way they handled it was incredible, and I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, super cool on all levels there. Alex Vesia, such a great Dodger. Like, when you think of these teams that have won, he's been such a huge part of all of this stuff. It is so hard year over year. You see it all the time. So hard year over year to be a consistently great bullpen pitcher, and he's been excellent for years and years and years with them. Truly one of, like, kind of the unsung heroes. But, like, that's like one of those ones where, like, if you see that jersey, you're like, ball for sure. Like, you for fucking sure know ball. Stuff like this is, this is what, I don't know. Stuff like this is like, it just makes sports awesome, dude. Like when everything always happens. And I'll tell you this right now, there's no fucking way Edwin Diaz threw a bullpen session. That is just some shit Dave Roberts said. You're not taking the guy that you're like, here's $24 million a year just to pitch one inning every once in a while. There's no way that they were like, hey, I think you need to work some stuff out in a bullpen. But good on Dave Roberts, Hall of Fame manager Dave Roberts, for giving some sort of reason as to why his highly priced free agent wasn't closing the game. And it's just you were at the game too. To see anytime you see an inning where somebody is like, 10 to 12 pitches, strikes out the side, nothing. I mean, it's just like, you're just like, oh man, how that must feel to be that untouchable.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So cool.
I think the only immaculate inning I ever saw was Max Scherzer when he was on the Dodgers. I was at the game where he picked up his 3,000th strikeout. And in that game, he took a no-hitter into the 8th. I believe he took it he ended up going 8 innings and giving up 1 hit. He gave up a double to Hosmer. I want to say it was Hosmer's last at bat. But that was the only base runner he gave up the whole game. 8 innings, 1 hit, no walks. I think he had like 10 Ks or something like that. And in the middle of it, he had an immaculate inning. And just like, yeah, you're watching that and you're like, this is, there's something special about an inning like that where it's just like strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, strike 1, strike 3. The crowd picks up on it. It's not subtle. It is like, it's commanding. And I will say this, last night was an incredible display of pitching across the board. Yoshinobu Yamamoto going up against Nolan McLean. It was my first time seeing Nolan McLean live. As a Phillies fan, I loathe him because we're going to have to see him for the next decade. and that guy is filthy.
He's the goods.
He's unreal, and Yamamoto is, of course, one of the best. That was a great game. 2 hours, maybe. I looked up in the 8th inning. It was 1-1, and both teams had one hit in the 8th inning. So just classic, And games like that are fun too, because you get a Bud Light before it starts, and it's the 8th inning, and you're still like working on it.
Yeah.
You're like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a nice cheap day at the office today.
Exactly. One pitcher who has not been faring so well that I wanted to run by you, and this is an interesting discussion just kind of philosophically. Tatsuya Imai, who I was excited to watch this year. I saw some of the red flags. I have a soft spot for Japanese baseball players. Ever since Ichiro came over and wore his first name on the back of his jersey, I was like, these are the coolest fucking people on earth. I've always held them in high regard, even when they're bad. So as a result, sometimes I don't know that they're bad until it's too late. I'm wondering if Imai is going to be one of those guys. Now, the doubts on Imai centered around the fact that, if you remember, he's, I believe, 145 pounds. He's a very small guy. But I watched Yamamoto for the last couple of years be a very small guy and kind of thrive and throw the ball 98 just because of mechanics and everything. He's struggling in Houston. And not only is he struggling with results, he's struggling with kind of everything. We're 2 weeks into the season. He is now on his third interpreter. He is struggling with that. He was commenting after his last start that, he had to get used to the mounds. I guess every mound is different, and he's like, in Japan, you only play against, 8 teams, so you have to get used to, 8 mounds, and then you come to America, it's like you gotta get used to 30 mounds, and he didn't like the way he was landing on whatever his last mound was, and, he was talking about that, and it just seems like there's been a lot of quotes where maybe, a little bit of self-doubt is seeping in, and it hasn't been the most positive language, body language, any of that from Imai. Obviously, he's in a place that doesn't have, a big history of Japanese players, and everybody, I know, kind of gets sick of them all going to the Dodgers or the Mariners or the Yankees, but comfort, they're human beings, right? The comfort level is important. I don't know what the Japanese population is like in Houston, but this seems like a guy who was already maybe homesick and a little bit uncomfortable. Have you picked up on any of this Imai stuff? Do you have any opinions on it?
Yeah, it's something definitely weird here. We forget when they come over. We take for granted them as people. I feel like we see Asian players come over and we kind of all think that they're the same guy. And that is never the case. What could be going on with Imai right now could be he is homesick, just straight isn't cut out for this, which is it happens to the best of them. He could just not be, he could just have thought this would go one way, it's going another way, and that's really affecting him emotionally. The guy right now is almost walking as many guys as he strikes out. You look at the strikeout numbers, he's doing okay to put guys away, but he is almost walking guys at the same rate. And that's killing him. So something is going on, whether it's home, we just don't know what this, who this guy is. Maybe he's not cut out to do this. He got to a point in his career, where he's, 29 years old. It's if I'm ever going to go to the MLB, now's the time to go to the MLB. And maybe he made that decision, came over here and was like, Texas fucking sucks. I don't like Texas at all. And, so yeah, I think this is a tough situation because it's what are you going to send him down? What are you going to do? You just, Could, yeah, I mean, I guess you could send him down, but it's like, it's not like the mounds are going to be any better in fucking AAA.
Well, the funny thing is the only good start of the season he had was against the A's in West Sacramento, which is a minor league mound. So maybe
The league ballpark.
I mean, and to be fair, he was really good in that start. He went 5 2/3, 3 hits, 3 walks, and 9 strikeouts. Shutout ball. The other 2 starts, most recently in Seattle, where he didn't make it out of the first, and he walked 4 guys against no strikeouts. You know, it's tough. And I think the other thing that we didn't cover in this little like rundown here is he put a target on his back. When he was coming over, and I think it was because he knew the Dodgers were not a realistic possibility, and he was trying to kind of market himself a little bit, and it worked on me because I saw this quote and I was like, oh my God, you gotta sign this guy. His whole thing was like, basically, in the most respectful Japanese way possible, fuck the Dodgers. I want to beat the shit out of the Dodgers. That's kind of what he said. I think that drove his interest. It piqued the interest in him. It drove his price up a little bit. Unfortunately, when you do that, you put a target on your back, and I think that, he's not going to have as much leeway in terms of like easing his way in because he talked a big game. Of course. Now being on his third interpreter, he can always say, "I never said that. I don't know where the guy got that."
The third interpreter thing is honestly the weirdest part about this. Like, the other thing that, like, I mean, try to think of the last time that you've said this about a Japanese baseball player or an Asian baseball player in general, where you'd be like, you know what? Maybe he's just like a pud. Maybe he just sucks. Like, as he could just suck as a person.
Sure.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that could be wrong. Having said all that, super early in the season, there's other guys that we could cover, other pitchers that we could cover that is like, hey, maybe this is also scary. Like Garrett Crochet is not playing very well right now. Like, we've got other things that are going on. So maybe it's just going to take him a little bit to figure this out. It's just that, like, I remember when they were talking about him early in the season, they were talking about, oh, the cool thing he has is this slider that breaks the other way. It's the slider that goes, the other direction from where a slider would go. And that's a cool pitch. But I'm like, man, I remember when Kodai Senga came over and it was like Ghost Fork. And boy, immediately you were like, that shit is gross. And like with this like reverse slider, you're just kind of like, is it? It's like his thing that he would always go to isn't working right now. And that can put you in a panic itself. So who knows what's going on? There's a lot of options. Certainly could be that he's just a pud.
I always thought a reverse slider was just a screwball. So it honestly threw me for a loop with me.
I thought a screwball was a reverse curveball.
Oh, could be.
I guess we were both. Yeah.
Listen, the Ghost Fork ended up being the real deal, but I'm still pissed when they hyped up Daisuke Matsuzaka with the gyro ball. I thought it was going to levitate. I was ready for some Mortal Kombat type shit, and it was just kind of like a decent third pitch for Daisuke. Let's talk about a guy that, we didn't record after the first week of the season, which sucked because I was ready to take a victory lap. And then after the second week, he was terrible. So I was like, well, I guess I'm never going to get to take that victory lap. And now he's unbelievable again. And I expect him to get injured before our next episode. So I figured now is the time for me to take my victory lap on Mike Trout. And it wasn't that I predicted he was going to have an amazing season. It's that I hoped. The audacity of hope. I said, I hope Mike Trout can return to his normal form. And he has basically had 2 absolutely incredible series and been complete dog shit in the middle. But the series he just finished against the New York Yankees, and it included a very Mike Trout game where he hits 2 home runs, including a go-ahead shot in the 7th inning, and then they lose 11-10 on a walk-off wild pitch. It's just so Mike Trout, so Angels. But the series he just had 4 homers in 3 games, the first road player to homer in 3 straight games at Yankee Stadium in a single series since Miguel Cabrera back in 2013, which I believe might have been one of his Triple Crown years. Trout This season, his whiff rate has been cut by 40%. He is hitting everything on the screws. He is putting together much better at bats. The batting average is still below 230, I believe, but the OPS is back over 900. He's got 6 or 7 home runs already. He's hitting the ball with authority. He just looks absolutely incredible out there. And he's playing center field, and he's playing every day. And I don't know that we'll get to say this next week. His season could be over next week, so I just want to give him his flowers right now. If nothing else, Trout versus Judge this week was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, always love when there's like one last. It's unfair of me to say it's his last, but that there's like the look into what made Mike Trout great in the first place and how incredible he is. Because like I think last year was actually he played 130 games and had 550 at bats, which is more than he'd had since 2019. 550, and he was just okay. And so I kind of was like, oh man, it's gone. It's gone. It's like when, you just like, he just like lost the magic. He couldn't throw, he couldn't do it anymore. And then to see how he's come out this season, where he's kind of just changed himself as a player. He had always struck out a fair bit, at least, these last few years. But when he was on the field, he would make this incredible contact and do his thing. But this year, obviously, the offseason was dedicated to a very specific regimen of trying to make contact with the ball more, looking at what he did last year. And I think that having that success and that length of time on the field last year probably helped him for this year, because like when you're playing, 30 games, 80 games, 120 games, 30 games, 50 games, do you even know what you need to work on? Do you even know like what you're bad at anymore? So like he got to see like, oh, okay, like now I know where I'm at as, physically as a player at 34 years old. And so I can work on those things and sort of maximize what I'm doing. But to see, for him to go toe to toe, with the other kind of greatest offensive player of this generation, real treat that I'm not sure we're going to get to have again, but we have it right now. And he's playing some excellent base and honestly getting pretty unlucky. He's pretty unlucky right now. So it's like if he just stays on the field, all of a sudden some of those hits, some of those hard hits that are finding gloves aren't anymore. We're back in the let's enjoy Mike Trout phase. So I'm psyched. I'm pumped.
Yeah, dude, that would certainly be nice. Well, listen, we're gonna cut this episode a little bit short, but we have time to talk about one more thing. So I'm gonna make a dealer's choice here. I'm gonna give you 4 options that we could talk about, and you tell me which one is the most interesting to you. Number 1, as the game goes on right now, Shohei Ohtani, for the first time since they implemented the Shohei Ohtani rule, is pitching and not hitting. He is just the pitcher tonight. He is not in the lineup as the DH. That's 1. Mason Miller has had an absolutely ungodly start to the season. He has now retired, I believe it's 31 consecutive batters, the vast majority by strikeout. I think at one point, the hitters were 0 for 18 with 17 strikeouts off of them. If we talk about that, I have to look up the numbers, but either way, they're eye-popping. The Ichiro statue was unveiled in Seattle. And this, listen, we talked last week, you asked me to say which team I thought was going to continue to struggle between the Mariners and the Red Sox. I said the Mariners. They have turned it around a little bit, but right after I said that, I basically said they were cursed, and they unveiled an Ichiro statue where the bat snapped in half when they pulled the curtain off of it. And last but not least, the Detroit Tigers signed Kevin McGonigal, number 1 prospect in all of baseball, maybe number 2, to an 8-year extension worth $150 million mere weeks into his Major League Baseball career. This is becoming a trend to give these guys really big contracts right off of the bat. And I don't know if it's connected to something the owners might know about what's going to happen with a potential lockout next year. But those are your things. Ohtani, Mason Miller, Ichiro, Kevin McGonigal. Where do you want to go?
All right. So I'm going to quickly eliminate. All right. So I don't want to talk about the Kevin McGonigal thing because I think that's a more interesting thing to delve into as to the whys and hows. And there's been kind of an explosion in those, specifically this year. There's been a real explosion in those contracts. I mean, I think the top, what most people would consider the top like 3 prospects, you know, in Colt Emerson and Connor Griffin and Kevin McGonigal all signed these deals. It's interesting, and I think that we could spend a lot of time on something like that. The Ichiro bat thing is just like really funny and really, really unfortunate, and kudos to that guy for making us love him even more with being so cool about it, blaming it on Mariano Rivera.
Such a good quote.
That was great. He's great. The Ohtani thing, it's always great to talk about Ohtani, but I would rather talk about when he is playing everything instead of like the weird thing where he's not. The thing that we have to talk about is Mason Miller. This is historic. Yeah. This is I'm so
glad this was the one. And just to give you the numbers, because I looked it up, this season he has made 8 appearances, thrown 8 in the 3rd innings. So think about this in terms of a starter. 8 in the 3rd innings, 1 hit, 1 walk, 20 strikeouts.
It's the Kerry Wood game. That's what he's done over the fucking season.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wild thing about him is like when you bring up any of his pages on any of the websites, like there's a stat that has been around for a little while called fielding independent pitching. And it's supposed to give you like a good idea of how good a pitcher would be independent of his fielding. So if somebody has really great fielding, you know, and they aren't actually that good, maybe the fielding independent pitching is a little higher. And, you know, same thing with the inverse of that. Mason Miller right now, his FIP is what his ERA should be, regardless of his fielding, is negative 1.28. It's negative.
I didn't even know you could do that. I had no idea that was possible.
I didn't know it could go below 0. And it's not like just below 0. That's a significant figure below 0. It's going to take him some time to get it above 0. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wild stuff.
Yeah.
So
it's
yeah. Talk about that. You need to talk about that because Jesus, this has been like a level of dominance that like I don't know that I guess Gagne, that Gagne year, I think that was pretty dominant, but it seems like we might be set up for another one here with Mason Miller.
Yeah, I feel like 88 Eckersley, 02 Gagne, and certainly there have been stretches of like Aroldis Chapman and people like that. You know, but look, you see a lot of guys who come in and they throw really hard. And Mason Miller, I'm going to pull this up right now because I want to make sure that my recollection is correct. Because Mason Miller came up and he was this guy who threw 104 miles an hour. And we went through those periods where, like, when Billy Wagner was throwing 100, it was like someone's throwing 100. And then Chapman was the first guy to really dial it up in that, like, 103 to even 105 range. And then a couple years ago, it was Mason Miller and it was Ryan Helsley of the St. Louis Cardinals. Those were the new guys who came in and were throwing the hell out of the ball. But Miller, despite having that fastball and putting up insane strikeout numbers, I mean, his strikeouts per 9 have always been crazy. He gave up a decent amount of runs. I mean, in 2024, he was an all-star. He was 4th in the Rookie of the Year, 2.49 ERA. The next year, he split between the Athletics and the Padres. And the thing is, with the Athletics, 38 games, he had a 3.76, and then something happened when he went over to the Padres. 22 games with the Padres, 0.77 ERA. Upped his strikeouts per 9 with the Padres to 17.4. And then this year, obviously, all zeros on the ERA. Strikeouts per 9 is up to 21.6. So this was a guy that, because I saw him with the Athletics in 24, I believe. Or maybe it was last year before he got traded. I went to, it was in Sacramento, so it had to be last year. And he blew a save against the Phillies. Max Kepler roided out of his mind, hit a game-tying home run off of him. And I remember being excited to see Mason Miller and then being kind of like unimpressed. And I looked at his numbers, I'm like, ERA in the mid-3s, like, this guy just throws hard, but he doesn't have anything beyond that. Boy, was I wrong. Whatever they unlocked in San Diego, this guy is absolutely next level. It's more than just the fastball. It is the off-speed stuff. When a guy's throwing 104 and he has a wipeout secondary pitch, you're cooked. There's no shot.
The slider's better than the fastball at this point. It's crazy.
It is. It absolutely is. And the fastball is still triple digits.
Yeah. Kudos to Mason Miller. Just an incredible start to the season.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that the Padres can actually win anything this year. But, he might make a really good trade chip.
They do play 8-inning games, so that's valuable.
That's true. And they've been better than I expected.
Yeah. And I do wonder what, they paid a pretty penny to get Mason Miller. So, and you kind of wonder, like, boy, if they resold at this point, you might be able to get that back and then some.
Yeah, definitely possible. I mean, it's a good problem to have. I just don't do what you did with Soto, which is trade more than you got back in the secondary deal. Because the Padres are not afraid. I'll give them that. They are not afraid to give up the players that they like to get the players that they feel like they need. By the way, before we sign off here, Ohtani is through 4 innings, 1 hit, no runs. So he is now 16 innings into the 2026 season, and his ERA remains at 0.00. Everyone says he wants the Cy Young. Boy, I'm not putting anything past this guy. I think it's possible he wins the Cy Young and the Dodgers break the wins record. They look just unbelievable. It's crazy.
You have to watch out for him with the Cy Young is Mason Miller. Mason Miller. He could be one of those closers that wins the Cy Young. So, going to be an interesting one.
Boy, that would be a fun race. I would be here for that. All right, well, listen, Jeff, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for hopping on the road. I know that's not always easy. Good luck with your work thing tomorrow. Happy Jackie Robinson Day. And I hope everything goes well for you. And then next week we're back to a less stressful environment for you.
That's right. I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to do it in a way in which I don't think I have to keep my voice down. There might not even be anybody in this room or that room, but I feel I'm self-conscious about my volume. I don't like that.
I get the same way when I have to record a pod on the road. And meanwhile, it's like everybody else is just fucking and doing drugs and running around and making all this noise. All right. That's a good way to end the episode. Until next time, I'm Pat Barker. That's Jeff Sewing. We're the Baseball Buddies. We will see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.